Awesome. Hi, everybody. Welcome to How to Find Good Fit Funders in Under 60 Minutes. If you haven't already, go ahead and jot down these two codes you see on your screen. Workshop 50 is going to save you $50 off of your first month with Instrumentl, and Workshop 2Mo is going to save an additional month off of an annual plan if you choose to go that route. This presentation is being recorded, and afterwards you will be emailed the slides and the recording. So if you're not able to follow along, don't worry, you'll be receiving it right after. All right, let's go ahead and get into it. So today we're going to talk about how to find good fit funders in under 60 minutes. If you haven't already, go ahead and share your name, organization, and then your biggest challenge when it comes to prospecting, when it comes to grants in general. Let me know what's challenging you, and we can try to solve that at the end in our demo. My name is Chandler Clayton. I host these weekly grant workshops. We use expert educators and best-selling authors to shape what we offer, our educational content. Together, we've helped 1,700, even more than that, 1,700 plus nonprofits in finding, tracking, and managing their grants. And every single day we're listening and we're hearing what's blocking these nonprofits like yours from achieving their grant seeking goals. And that is what we're using to build out these workshops. So if you have any suggestions, please feel free to drop me a line. I'll include my info at the very end. Okay, so without any further ado, let me know with a simple yes or no in the chat if any of these resonate with you. Do you ever feel ill-prepared in your organization's ability to consistently find good fit funders and apply for grants? I saw a few folks had mentioned that before. Sue says yes. Mary says yes, absolutely. I think that's a common theme we're going to see here. What about this one? You feel overwhelmed by the number of things that you have to do when it comes to grant seeking. Yes or no? Yes. Oh, definitely yes. Yeah, I think that's a very common thing in our industry. All right, what about this last one? You feel writer's block because you carve out time wanting to write a grant, but then you end up just staring at a blank screen. I know this happens to me all the time. I need to have, a little bit of flexibility for my creative time. I see some yeses in here. Chad said, nailed it. Awesome. Okay, so it seems like we have some common themes here. So without any further ado, let's get into it. So if you think to yourself, are grants really worth all the effort? The answer that I have for you today is yes, absolutely. There are over 87,000 grant-making foundations, and we have 11,000 plus active grants on Instrumentl alone. We're adding about 100 every week. So when you sign up for Instrumentl, you will get an actual update every week with new opportunities that match your funding needs. So there are a ton of opportunities out there. And the reason we drive this point home is because we really don't want this to be you. So over the past few years, we've reported 49% of nonprofit employees expecting cost cuts, 54% of leaders implementing some sort of change, and then estimates of somewhere between 11 and 38% of nonprofits may have had to close due to COVID-19 impact. So obviously, it's a very interesting time that we're in. The sources of funding reflect that. But the point here is there are plenty of opportunities out there. It's just a matter of finding the ones that fit your needs. And that's what we're going to focus on today. So our agenda for today, well, we're going to start with why grants are so powerful. And then we're going to dive into what exactly is prospect research. And then finally, we're going to go through and I'm going to show you how to actually start finding good fit funders today with Instrumentl. And for everybody who sticks around to the very end, we're going to have 2 free bonuses. So some freebies, some great resources that will help you along your grant making journey. Okay, so be sure to stick around and we'll have that. One of them is a special 40-pager that is going to be a workbook that you can actually use and work along. And it's going to basically cover what we're going over today. So why are grants so powerful? Well, grants are so powerful because they cover so many different funding areas. Whether you're dealing with, a specific education project, a very specific program, maybe you're just wanting general operating expenses. That's very common. And sometimes it can be difficult to find those. your admin costs, things like that. Or maybe you're opening a new facility and you need to cover your cost of your capital project. There are grants out there for that. And you can define it so that you are finding exactly what you need as far as what you're funding. So whether it's that project, whether it's that new facility, whatever it is, there are opportunities and you can actually sort by those. I'll show you how to do that later. But the other reason why they're so important is because there's this foundation rule. It's called the minimum distribution rule. And essentially it means that foundations have to give 5% of the average market value of its net investment assets. So that's a mouthful, but in short, a lot of this money goes to grants. I'm going to show you an example right here. So right here, we can see the New York Community Trust, and we can see their total assets, close to 3 billion there. And if we're taking 5% of that, that's going to be roughly $146 million that they have to give, a lot of which is going to grants. And if we actually look at what their total giving amount is, it's actually quite a bit larger than this 146 million. So there's a ton of money out there. This is one very specific example, and there are 87,000 plus. So there's a ton of money out there, and it's just a matter of finding the ones that align with your needs and standing out in a crowd. Okay, so summing it up, why are grants so powerful? Well, many foundations are consistent in their giving. So if you think about it, a foundation is really a steward of capital. They are giving money to these organizations that they believe are creating this positive impact. And so if you are, reflecting that and you're showing that you actually are creating that impact, then they're going to keep giving you that money. They're going to keep being that steward of change. So beyond that, grants can also be systemized. So you can take clear steps. You can develop your systems. We're going to talk about that in depth today. And you can make it so that you are no longer spending, huge chunks of time and getting very few results. And finally, grants really do help with your own organization's accountability. It's more feedback loops for you because we have those reporting requirements, those reporting deadlines, things like that. You're actually getting a clear view of the work that you're doing, and you're able to measure it and analyze it. And that's all thanks to those reporting requirements. So not only are you getting money, but you're getting a clear insight into what your organization is actually achieving. Okay, so that in short is why grants are so powerful. Let's dive on into what exactly is prospect research. I know that's what a lot of us here are here for today. So let's dive on in. Prospect research, when we really think about it, is the process of finding, assessing, and qualifying public, private, and corporate foundations to pursue more strategic and planned giving. So if we're looking at this image on the right here, once we have our idea, we've already generated our idea, we know how we want to create our change. Well, the next step is finding your funding. And that is where prospect research comes in. It's finding the right fit that is going to get you the funding that you need. So we're considering not only, do they align with our goals, but also do they align with our, our needs from our monetary needs and things like that. And that is going to be our find your funding. So that is a large part of this grant life cycle, because after that, once you develop your proposal, submit it, and then manage it, it just restarts. You just keep restarting. You keep finding these new grants. So this is probably, in my opinion, the proposal is very important, but unless you are going after the right fits, your proposal is not going to stand out. So I think it's probably the most important part of the grant making process. And this quote really drives it home, because 40% of donors in a recent study admitted that they could actually give more than they currently are. And one story that I like to highlight here is we have a customer who she is a executive director of this nonprofit, and she was, hosting a volunteer event for her nonprofit. And this volunteer that has worked with them countless times it turns out, on a board of a foundation. And they were just chatting. They had no idea about this connection. And they realized after chatting that this nonprofit had a specific need for funding that this foundation that the volunteer was working at had an open grant for. And so by building that connection, they were able to secure that grant and earn that, that funding for their organization. So there's a ton of ways you can build these connections. That one, that's probably not going to happen all the time, but that's one, clear way that you can build that relationship. So what info do we actually have on funders? Well, we have key things such as stats on assets, their giving patterns, trends over the past few years, names of these key individuals that you can start building these relationships with, such as the example I just gave. We have giving trends, cycles over the years, lists of past grantees, which is really useful for seeing if there are any that are similar to yours. We can focus on the geographic areas to see, if I'm an organization in Georgia and a foundation only funds those in Florida, obviously it's not a good fit, saves me a bunch of time. And then obviously the overall grant eligibility requirements, that is probably the quickest way of filtering out bad fits. So I'll give you a couple of examples here. This is a screen grab of the Cliff Bar Family Foundation. And so what we're looking at here, this is a screen grab from Instrumentl, and we can see in this one screen, all the total assets, their median giving amount. We can see their phone number if we want to just give them a ring. We can see the names of all these key folks. So there's so much info, and I'm actually going to dive in and show you exactly how to find this at the very end, but I just wanted to give you a little glimpse. And then this is talking about the differences between amounts rewarded to new grantees versus repeat grantees, something that's going to help you consider your ask. And then we have giving by NTE codes. I'll dive into that in more detail later, but that is one of the most important ways of making sure that you are a good fit. Okay, so now that we have a basic understanding of prospect research, let's talk about these key questions that we can ask ourselves in order to evaluate our funders. So these are a lot, there's 16 of these, so I don't expect you to memorize all of them, but if you want to jot down one or two, a few of them that really stand out, that help you define good fit, then go ahead and do that. And at the very end, we'll pull those back up. And when we're actually going through our prospects, we'll keep these in mind. Okay, so let's start with some grant RFP overview questions. So these are questions such as, what's the grant maker's mission? Does it align with mine? Very clearly, looking at their overview, do we work on the same sort of things? And then we have, what are the specific goals? Are these aligned with my goals for my program? Do we meet their eligibility requirements? Like I mentioned earlier, very clear way of seeing yes or no. RFP is request for proposal. I see Sue's question in the chat there. Request for proposal. And then what's the size of the grant? Like I mentioned, we want to make sure that the monetary size is aligning to what we need. So if we're going after something that is, we're trying to raise $250,000, there's a grant that is worth $500, might not be the best use of our time. We might want to devote more time to those that are in the realm of $10,000 or $50,000. And then finally, what type of grant is it for? So is it covering those general operating expenses? Is it covering our capital projects, etc.? Okay, so those are a few of the questions we're going to ask when it comes to our grant RFPs. And now I'm going to dive into our questions we're going to ask about our giving medians. So when we talk about our giving medians, what we're really talking about is what's the median grant size from this funder? Like I mentioned, does it meet our needs? And how did that amount change over the past few years? This is really important because we were able to visualize historic trends. And so you can quickly see whether it's going down or whether they're giving more. And if they're giving less, that might be one indicator that something might be going on within that foundation. And that just might raise a red flag. It doesn't necessarily mean that it's not going to be a good fit, but it does signal that there's a good chance that there's something going on and it might be a bad fit. Okay. Okay, so now we're halfway through our questions. We're going to get into our funder giving history questions. So these are questions such as, can you identify at least 3 previously funded organizations that are similar to yours? Is your organization's geographic location represented? What percentage of those are funded are new grantees? This is very important. I'll talk about this a little bit later, but to drive this point home, we recommend that you're only going after those funders that have over 30% openness to new grantees. And that just means that it's going to be a lot easier to get your foot in the door. If you're going after a funder and, historically they have a 5% openness to new grantees, unless you really know somebody there, or you have something that's really going to make you stand out, it's going to be very difficult to get your foot in the door. That might be one of those opportunities where if you do, then it's great because you probably will be able to receive that funding year after year, but it's going to be harder initially. So that is just what we recommend, is looking over 30%. And then finally, has the funder been giving to more new grantees or giving more to new grantees or more to past grantees? If you remember that screen grab that I pulled up a few slides ago, that talks about how those differences occur, and we'll go into more detail on that a little bit later. Okay, so we have two more funder giving questions. So these are, does the median grant amount for new grantees align with your project budget? We've talked about this a few times now. And then does your organization's impact area align with the funder's 3-year historical giving by NTE codes? So for those of you who may not know what an NTE code is, it essentially defines the fields of work that this funder prioritizes. So for instance, if I am a after-school program and I see that a funder has prioritized the NTE code education and maybe youth development, well, that is a great indicator that we are on the same page here, and that's a good fit funder. Okay. Where do you find, I see a question from Gretchen, where do you find NTE codes? So those are either going to be in the IRS Business Master File, which is a collection of all the 990 reports that foundations have to submit. But I will show you how to do that quickly and easily within Instrumentl at the very end. So keep that question in mind, and I'll show you how to do that, Gretchen. Okay, so we're going to end with 3 internal considerations. Okay, so these are questions such as, does your nonprofit have enough bandwidth? So if we're a very small team and there's a lot of project, submission requirements and then reporting requirements, it's something that we need to consider. Do we actually have the capacity to take this on? And then building on that, do we have parts where we can actually repurpose our past proposals? So if we're seeing, common themes here, if we're applying to a bunch of grants that fall under the same category, are there areas that we can repurpose? So can we highlight some of our work that we've previously done and use it in multiple different RFPs? Can we actually use specific examples? Is there part of this template that we can use for this, etc.? So that's just going to save us a bunch of time in the long run. Okay, so those are our 16 key questions that we're going to consider. And now we're going to dive in. Oops, sorry. Slide's not supposed to be there. We're going to dive into this quote right here, which is talking about systems. Okay, so systems are so important when talking about the grant world, because I want to drive home this point here. This is James Clear. He wrote Atomic Habits. And I love this quote because it really talks about something that I think relates to a lot of nonprofits out there. You do not rise to the level of your goals, you fall to the level of your systems. Your goal is your desired outcome. Your system is the collection of daily habits that will get you there. This year, spend less time focusing on outcomes and more time focusing on results. So summing this up, with a lot of nonprofits, we have our minds in the clouds. We're trying to create this huge impact, this positive impact in our community. And it can be very easy to get stuck on, our goals without thinking of, what are the actual steps that we take to get there? And that's what we mean by systems. And I'm going to show you how to develop some systems within Instrumentl. So let's dive into how to actually find these good fit funders. Okay, so what's the easiest way? The easiest way is with Instrumentl. In all fairness, there are other ways to do it. So there's examples such as Google, funder websites, you can find those 990 forms that I mentioned earlier. And then there's other paid databases as well. I recommend Instrumentl because it really is the institutional fundraising platform. What I mean by that is a lot of these other sources, they cover 1 or 2 aspects of the grant the grant cycle. So we're talking grant prospecting, grant tracking, and grant management. Instrumentl covers all 3 of those. So that's very rare. And that really is what sets Instrumentl apart within the field. We have all this great data. I'm going to show you actually in an example how to find all of that. But I want to drive home this very last point here. So on average, we found that Instrumentl saves 3 hours per week and increases grant application output by 78% after the first year. So imagine having 12 extra hours each and every week, or 12 extra hours a month that your employees get to spend doing anything else. So that's time spent actually driving those projects, actually creating that impact, not just applying for these grants. Or maybe you want to apply for more grants, expand your funding. That's more time to do that. So that is why I recommend Instrumentl, but I'm going to show you how to actually go through it. And I'm going to highlight our Plus plan. It's our new Plus plan. We have these great features such as advanced funder insights. We have recipient profiles, so we can use reverse searching. I'll show you how to do that. And then we have invite only funders. So I'll show you if you want to kind of take your prospecting to the next level. If you're kind of becoming stagnant, then that is one way that you can do that. And so I'm going to show you how easy it is. I'm going to post a link in the chat and go ahead and follow along. It's going to make it a lot easier if you're able to follow along on your screen. And if you do so, then you'll actually be able to find specific examples that relate to your specific nonprofit or organization or grant writing consultancy or whatever it is that you do. So go ahead and click on that link, and it's going to take you to this screen right here. So start your 14-day free trial. If you don't see this screen, then you might see one that says submit your email. We're kind of testing that on our website right now. Just to clarify, that would be why you would see that. So I'm going to go ahead and put my info in here. I encourage you to do the same on your own. And this is totally free. There's no strings attached, no credit card or anything. So it's just 14 days. You get to try the platform. And I'm going to walk you through it. So go ahead and put your own info in, follow along. And then when you get down to the next button, give me a thumbs up in the chat. And that's how I'll know that we're tracking along. And then I can kind of continue on from there. Okay. So it's going to ask you your organization type. I'm going to put that I'm a 501c3 nonprofit. I'm going to kind of do an example with regards to educational field trips, but do whatever applies to your organization. Deborah, I see you're done. Awesome. Once I finish up here and see a few more that are tracking, then I will move on. So yep, it's going to ask your operating revenue, and then if you have that 501c3 status. Okay, so let me know in the chat when you are tracking along, and at that point I can continue on. Awesome, I see JC is done. Fantastic. I'll wait for 2 to 3 more, and then I'll keep going. I want to make sure that we're all on the same page here. All right, let me know when you are done. Going to wait for a couple more. Awesome, I see Sue's done. Let's wait for one more and then I can dive on in. And at that point, if you're still a little bit behind, like I mentioned, I will be sending the recording as well as the slides. So don't worry if you're not tracking along, you'll be able to follow along at your own pace later. Awesome, I see chat is ready. So let's go ahead and move on to this next screen. Okay, so it's going to ask you if you want to schedule a strategy consultation. What I recommend is booking one of these group demos. I'll include the link in the chat. These are great because they consist of very personalized experiences with our sales executive, Karen, where she can actually walk you through your specific organization, what looks good, what doesn't, what we can, kind of refine. And then it includes some organizations that are similar to yours. So it'll help you kind of brainstorm off of one another and find some really creative ways to use that funding. So I just included that in the chat. Feel free to do that. For now, I'm going to go ahead and skip. But I really do recommend that you get one of those meetings. It's really going to help. And then it's going to ask about your organization. So where is your organization registered? If you work in many different areas, for instance, if you have programs in LA, you have programs in San Francisco, you have programs in Las Vegas, whatever it is, put wherever you're registered. And that's going to be what we're looking for here. And try to get as specific as possible. So go down to the county level. So I'm going to say I'm currently in Salt Lake City, Utah. So I'm going to put Salt Lake County. And I will confirm. And then click Save and Continue. And it's going to take you to your project overview page. Okay, so your project overview is going to be where you're putting in your project name. So think about this as not what your program is, not what your entire organization does, but your specific project that you're looking for funding. So what I mean by that is if I'm an after school, if I run an after school program, but I am really trying to get money for maybe my computer programming program. Maybe I need to get some more laptops. Maybe I am trying to work or get a field trip to, the Museum of Science and Arts. Whatever it is, try to get very specific here. Okay, so I'm going to put environmental field trips. And that is what I'm going to try to get my funding for. It's going to ask a little bit more info. I'm going to put I'm a nonprofit, put whatever applies to you. And then finally, it's going to ask you this question about if you'd like to see grants specifically for faith-based organizations or programs. If you click yes, it'll ask you a couple more questions, and then you'll have the option of choosing whether to see only faith-based or secular. For just starting out, I always recommend to keep it on both. That's just going to get you more opportunities right off the bat. And you can always go back in later and edit this. I'll show you how to do that. So at that point, I'm going to save and continue. And here I'm in the project details. So this is where we're really getting into the nitty gritty. And this is where we're going to refine our project. And this is what's going to help really find those good fit funders. Okay, so I'm going to put that I work inside the United States. My project takes place in specific states or counties. I'm going to select them. So this is now where you're actually working. So I mentioned earlier, we were putting where we were registered. Now it's actually where our projects take place. So I am registered in Salt Lake County, and I probably have projects that take place in Salt Lake County, but I might also have projects that take place in Kane County, down near Moab, or maybe I go down to my field trips, go to Washington County, down by St. George area, close to Zion. So I'll put Washington County, and then maybe I have a weird program and I work in, another state. Let's see, maybe I actually have a project in Fulton County. So in Georgia. So maybe I work in like the Atlanta area. Maybe that's a weird offshoot that we had spring up. Wherever you work, that's what you're putting in here. Okay, and then we're going to put our fields of work. So it's going to ask 1 to 10 key terms. Okay, I see a question real quick from Sue. We are based in Wyoming, but our members are from all over the US. So which do I choose? We also travel across the country. So if you are truly national in scope, then it's going to give you this option. Let me go ahead and exit out of here. It's going to give you this option of clicking my project is national in scope. So national in scope, if you click this little icon, it means that your project doesn't take place in any specific locations. It's not geographically bound. So that might apply to you, Sue. If you have very specific locations, then go ahead and input those. Otherwise, if it really is just very broad national, then go ahead and click that option. Okay, so back to our fields of work. This is going to be the areas of focus that our organization covers. So what I mean by this is my example here is an environmental field trip. I clearly deal with environmental education. So if I start typing that, I can see it pop up in the drop-down menu. Maybe I know that I work with K through 12. So I will click that. And then that stage, once I've put a few of those off of the top of my head, maybe if I'm starting to draw a blank, you can click this browse all categories. and it's going to give you a few different drop-down menus that you can select from. So one thing that I recommend to, I'm going to put children with disabilities just because maybe my program works with that. But one thing I'm going to recommend to anybody that deals with disadvantaged communities is to select this option under community that is, where is it? Minority services. Minority services opens up a lot of very specific grants. And if you are working with any disadvantaged communities, it's a great option and it's going to give you some great, great grants to go after. So I highly recommend that. I'm going to go through education. After school summer educational program absolutely applies. Maybe for this one, I'm going to hold off on career college preparation. Maybe that's a different project that I have. And so if I want to create a new project, then I can put that in. But what I recommend is getting anywhere between 3 and 7 of these keywords. And that's going to help you make your search not too specific, but not too broad. So anywhere less than 3, it's going to be too broad. Anywhere more than 7, you might be getting into too specific of grants, and you might want to expand that a little bit. Mary, I see your question. Will I be able to find funding for a business client? Absolutely. So if you are a consultant, you can select that in the fields when you're selecting your organization and project overview. And then you can do very much the same process. It's just going to be building it for your clients. So what you can do is you can have each client as a project within Instrumentl, and then that's kind of how you can sort that. And I'll show you what I mean once we actually get into the main platform. So once you choose your fields of work, then it's going to ask you what size grants. This goes back to our median grant amounts that I mentioned. So I'm a very small nonprofit. Maybe it's just me. And so I'm not going to look for anything below 5,000. A lot of organizations choose nothing below 1,000. Because I really need to get the most out of my efforts, I'm going to put 5,000, and I'm going to keep it open on the maximum size. And then what am I going to use them for? Well, if you need any additional information on what these mean, you can hover over the little icon on the right. But I'm clearly going to need mine for education, its project, and then maybe I need general operating expenses to cover, buses and staffing and things like that. Okay. And then if you're an academic researcher, there are a couple more options for you there. All right, at this point, I'm going to click save and exit. Go ahead and let me know in the chat. I'm going to keep going, but let me know with a thumbs up if you're tracking along. But in the interest of time, I want to make sure that I can cover everything that we talked about earlier and show you how to actually find it. So I'm going to keep cruising along. So right now they are finding my matches. And great, so there are 271 grants for me in that quick second. Oh, Mary, sorry, I see your new question. What I mean was, does this database have funders for for-profit clients? Yes, but it is not the main focus. The main focus is predominantly the nonprofit area. So you're going to be a little more limited in the for-profit, but you can specify that. And that is something that I would bring up when you schedule your consultation with Karen. She knows a lot more about that than I do. Okay, so now we found my grants. I'm going to click Let's Go. And what I immediately see is my Opportunity Matches tab. So an opportunity match is any grant, any foundation that has an open grant that you can apply for. So what this means is if I look on the right side here, it has my opportunity. So this Charles Stewart Mott Foundation has this education advancing after school opportunity. And this means that this is an active grant that I can start to go after right away. It shows my deadline. So this is a rolling deadline. If I look, let's see, maybe, so I'll show you 2 more examples. So this one has a predicted deadline, the September 15th date. That means that based off of historical data, this is when those are usually, you usually need to get those proposals in. The only reason it's predicted is because they haven't actually opened it just yet. And that'll change when it is actually open. And this is one that shows an example of one that is actively open. Okay, so these are all of our opportunities. We can scroll on through. We can also filter. So we can filter by the deadline. Maybe we want to plan out, a few weeks in advance. We can start to plan out that way. You can see that the deadlines are kind of moving forward. We can go by amount. We can go by our new. So if you've been in here for a while and you only want to find some new ones, maybe you've spent a lot of time looking through, you can filter by that. And that's only going to show you new opportunities that we're updating each week. And then we can filter. So this is where I mentioned that we can filter by our funding use. So if I'm only looking for those general operating expense grants, I can select this box, and that's only going to show me those grants that cover general operating expenses. I can go by, the funder type, and then also include any previously saved or previously hidden. And what that means is these two buttons right here on the bottom right, we have our save and our hide. And so I'll close our Amelie bubble right there, our chat. So if we see that this is not a good opportunity right off the bat, we can just immediately hide it. Saves us a bunch of time. It's not going to show up. So now it's gone. Now we don't have to worry about it anymore. Whereas if we see that it is a good opportunity, we can save it. So what I normally do when I'm looking through these is I'm going to look at the deadline, February 28th, that's in 5 days. I'm probably not going to get that done in time. So let's look at one of these rolling deadlines. So this Albertsons Foundation, Intermountain, it is a rolling deadline, unspecified amount, education K through 12. And then I see it has all these other fields that aren't exactly what I do. So I'm going to look for one. If I have very limited time, I'm going to look for one that is more aligned with what I need. And so what I would normally do is I would just hide it, and then I would find the next one. And so let's look at this education program from Carnegie Corporations in New York, up to $10 million. So I'm probably not going to ask for $10 million, but it's nice that they offer up to that. And I see environmental education and education K through 12. So that shows me right off the bat, it's dealing with what I work with. Location, just the United States, so it's all over. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to skim through the overview. So I can see our goal, American public education prepares all students, yada, 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 new designs to advance learning, post-secondary success. And then I can see leadership, public understanding. So I am seeing that this is a pretty good match for me right off the bat. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to look at the eligibility requirements. So you have to be a 501c3. My organization is ineligibility. So if any of these apply to me, then I would immediately hide it. But since at a glance, this is looking good, I'm going to say could be a good opportunity. And then I'm going to save this. When I save it, I can either save it under researching. First of all, I can select the project that I want to put it in. So if I have multiple different projects, I can choose which one I want this grant to apply to. I can choose the status, so whether I'm researching it, whether I'm planned, whether it's actually in progress, submitted, awarded, declined, or abandoned. I'm going to put it in the researching stage, and I'm going to save it. When I save it, that sends it over to my tracker tab. We'll get there in a second, but I want to save a few more opportunities. And so let's look at this IP international paper. I am seeing, let's just say it's a good fit. Then I can look at funder data. Let's see. So for this one, I see environmental education. This is the historic way that you would have to look through our funder data. This is the 990 report that organizations have to send in. And you can clearly see it's a pain to search through. And so this year, all foundations are switching to a digital submission. So that means that it's going to be much easier to pull. So if you see on Instrumentl that only this 990 form is included, that's because they are either missing a bunch of information on it, or it is illegible. Sorry, I struggled with that word. So that is not going to have that. But if we look at one that does, let's see here. So a few bad examples here, but let me try to find one that actually does have that 990 report. So here we go. This is a good example. So here I can dive into my 990 and I can see my overview. So I have my total giving, median grant amount, 15,000. That's great. If I want to give them a call, numbers right there. Key people. So maybe I add a note that says, ask board if they know, Richard Krause. And then I can keep going and I see my giving history. And so this is a plus feature where you can see these historical trends. And so what I see here is that there hasn't been a crazy change. If I saw that this graph was really going down, then that would be that red flag that would tell me something's happening at this foundation, might not be the best time to get involved. I could even save it and leave a note that says maybe come back to this next year, see if they kind of stabilize with their giving. But since it looks pretty good, I'll keep researching. I can see the median grant amount is 15,000. I can see past grantees and their areas. So what I see here is that my areas aren't actually included in here. So they haven't historically been in Utah, but let's say they were, or let's say that my organization's in Florida. Well, then I can narrow it down. I can search by Florida. And what it's going to do is it's going to bring up all of the organizations within Florida that have been received or that have received funding from this opportunity. So I see this, Brevard Community College Foundation. If I open that up in a new tab and I click in here, then I can see their past awards received. So they got this one and the Bank of America Charitable Foundation, the Florida College System. And if I'm an organization very similar to this one, I can look here and I can see immediately that these are two new opportunities that I can start to go after right away. So that's what we mean by reverse searching. So that's a great way of looking through past grantees and seeing who's funding them and using that to find some new funding opportunities. But diving back in, we can see openness to new grantees, 12%. So that's pretty low. It does change significantly from year to year. Last year, or 2019, was close to that 30% threshold. So this is one of those, I would call it a yellow light. This is one that maybe I want to go for, but maybe I'm not going to prioritize it over some of those green lights. So if I have the time, I'll go for this one. If I don't, I can put it on the back burner. And then a few other things. So new grantees are historically receiving close to $3,000 less than repeat grantees. So when I'm developing my proposal and figuring out what I'm going to ask for, I'm going to take this into consideration. And if I've never worked with this founder or this foundation before, I am probably not going to ask for this full 10,200 amount. Maybe I'm asking for 7,500, or maybe I'm asking for somewhere, in the middle, but I'm going to take this in consideration. And it looks to me like this funder needs to build a relationship and establish trust in order to give more. So that is what this is showing me. And then finally, we have our NTEE codes. And so like I mentioned earlier, if you find your field of work somewhere represented in the top 5 here, NTE codes, then that's a good fit. So I see education as their number 1. And so that shows me that, I deal with education. That's a great fit. And I can even click it and see specifically what areas of education they're working with. So, if this universities was actually environmental education, that would indicate to me that this is a perfect fit. This one, like I said, is probably a yellow light. There are probably better ones out there, but for the purposes of this demo, let's just save it. So I'll save it. I'll say that it's planned. So I'm actually going to do it. I'm going to request 7,500. My submission goal, I'm going to set, let's say mid-March. And then any notes that I want to put, yada, 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 I can save it. And then it's going to go over to my tracker. So this is what our tracker looks like. I'm going to actually exit out and I'm going to show you one of our dummy accounts and use this tracker, because this is showing you somebody who's been working actively in here. So these are all of the opportunities. We have all of our deadlines, all of our statuses, amounts, and then we have tasks. So once you enter into the tracker, and so I'm going to go specifically into my environmental project. For those who may have, sorry, my cat just knocked over a bunch of stuff in the background. If you heard that, my bad. So if you're trying to get to the tracker from your matches tab, it's just right here. So you're in your matches, over to the tracker, and you can track for each specific project. So within each of these opportunities, we can put the year, we can duplicate it if we want to go after it year after year. We can even change the owner. So if we're working on a larger team, I can assign this, maybe John Doe is in charge of this opportunity now, adding notes, submission goal, and then I can create these tasks. And so these are really cool because if you are working on a team more than just yourself, and even in an organization, I know nonprofits tend to have high turnover. So you can keep this all organized in one place so anybody can come in and have everything they need right at their fingertips. And so here, maybe I'll put a submission goal, submit LOI, put whatever deadline, and then I can assign it to one of my team members and put any collaborators that I need. And then you can create events that way. And so that will help track. And each week you'll get an update of what tasks you have and what deadlines you have coming up. And so that helps your team kind of stay on track. And then you can also add any documents that you want. So if you have any past, templates or case studies, things that you want to include, you can put them in here. And if anybody comes in, maybe you have a new hire and they're just getting started, they can access your previous documents and they can just hit the ground running. There's very little onboarding that needs to be done. And so then we can click done and there's our opportunity. Our tracker is our, one place of truth where we can see everything that needs to be done. And this is where we can really plan out our grant year. So we have, all of our grants through, we can organize by date. So let's organize by deadline. We have, up to October, November, February next year, etc. And we have all of our rolling opportunities. A few other things that I want to show you. So if we want to, if we're reporting to a boss or something, and we want to give them a snapshot of what we're doing with our grants, well, we can choose the project. So let's just choose this environmental project. You can select whatever status is. So if you're just trying to see, how's the research been going, or, what do we have planned? What are we working on right now? What have we been rewarded? Whatever. So I'm going to select all just to show you what that looks like. Select your date range, and then you can, include if ones that are hidden, etc. But you can create this report. It takes a matter of seconds. Download this PDF. And right in one spot, you have a snapshot of your entire grant strategy. So you can just print this off, slap it on your boss's desk, and they will understand what you've been working on and what is coming down the pipeline. So that is probably one of my favorite features about Instrumentl. But beyond that, I want to show you a couple more things. We have about 10 minutes. So I'm going to spend maybe 3 or 4 more minutes, and then I'll open it up to questions and get you guys those freebies. So if you want to add people, down in this left-hand corner in account, so account manage team, then you can add more users. And so you can, grow your team, and you can all have them all in the same platform using the same tracker so that you are all on the same page. Going back into our project, we can edit our project at any time. So if you want to change it, we just click the edit project in the top right, and we can, change whatever we need. If we want to change our fields of work, etc., we can do that here. If we have an existing template, so maybe we've already, developed some funders that we're going to go after, well, you can click this add new. And if you want to add one, it's very simple. If you want to add upload mini, then all you'll have to do is download this template. And this template is going to have some very simple information. Input all of your info in there, and then you can download it or submit it, and it will upload everything right into your tracker, your one space of truth. Beyond that, if you can't find an organization that you're looking for, you can search them. So, maybe I know that Petzl Foundation has some things. I'm not sure I spelled it right. Let's just say this Pets. They're a recipient, so they're not a funder. Let's find a funder. Pet Education Team Corps. Let's say that they might not have any open opportunities, but this is something I'm interested in going after. I can add them to my tracker. So I'll add new, create the opportunity, and then I can add it to my tracker. And that's one way that I can find those opportunities that don't have open invites. Another way that I can do that is in our matches tab, I can go to our funder matches. And this is going to show funders that align with my goals, but but might not have open opportunities. So these might be invite only, or maybe they just don't have it open yet. These are people that you can start building relationships with. I see a question in the chat from Sue. Sue says, can you directly search another nonprofit who's similar to you to see where they got their funding? Absolutely. So let's just say, you know, I'll put Nature Center, see if anything comes up. Yeah, so I can see, you know, this Nature Center, if I'm in Ohio, I can look down past awards. I see that they've gotten this Pequot Community Foundation. I can look into here, and this gives me information. I can save them to my tracker if they're a good fit. So yes, in short, Sue, you can definitely do that, and I highly recommend it. It's probably the easiest way of finding really good, really aligned funders because they've already worked with people in your field. Okay, so that in short, I know that was extremely fast and that was a lot to cover. Like I said earlier, we will have the replay for you, but that is Instrumentl. So it is really great if you want to, you know, kind of hone in your prospecting and also have everything in one place so that you don't need a bunch of different systems. With one tool, your entire team can be on the same page. So with that, I'm going to wrap things up. So this is Karen. I included that link in the chat. Let me know if you need it again, but she can help you really dive into your specific organization and find some very specific grants for you. Our takeaways today: grants are a great way to diversify your funding. Instrumentl does all the heavy lifting when it comes to finding new grants and makes that tracking and management significantly easier. And finally, you can use Instrumentl to turbocharge your grant system. And you can also join us for a bunch more free trainings on our Luma events page. We have a ton of these. We have some partner webinars with some very awesome experts in the field. So if you are looking to really grow your knowledge of grants, then please join us for our upcoming events. My name, again, is Chandler. This is all of my contact information. So if you want to message me, feel free. And then these two promo codes. The workshop 2Mo is going to save you an additional month off of your annual plan. And then this workshop 50 is going to save you $50 off of your first month. And then finally, since we stuck around to the end, I'm going to include these freebies. So the first one is our ultimate go versus no-go RFP tool, evaluation tool. And so this is going to take a lot of what we talked about today. And it's a workbook that you can follow along, and it'll help you evaluate whether or not to go after some funding opportunities. So that is in the chat. Awesome. And then if you can submit that by Friday, then you can receive this awesome freebie. Our last one is the 10 best lessons from 10 grant writing experts. So this is a collaboration with some of our partners. So you may have heard of best-selling authors such as Dr. Bev Browning. She wrote Grants for Dummies. Meredith Noble, she has an awesome grant course. We've essentially taken their insights and compiled it into this one resource. So it really is one of the best resources I've seen for grant writing. So if you are a grant writer, I would highly recommend this one. And in order to get this one, all you have to do, you have to do a little more work than the other one. All you have to do is save 3 grants to your tracker that you think are good fit funders, take a screenshot, and then email it to me at chandler@instrumentl.com. And then you can receive that freebie. And finally, if you know another nonprofit group that could benefit from this workshop, send me an email. We're always trying to expand our network, and we're trying to, you know, get in the eyes of as many nonprofit professionals. So if you think somebody would benefit from this, feel free to drop me a line. And with that, we have 3 more minutes, so I want to make sure that I can address anybody's questions. So if you have any questions, feel free to unmute yourself and let me know. All right. And if we don't have any questions, with that, I'm going to go ahead and wrap it up. Thank you so much for joining me today. I really appreciate it, and I really hope that you got something out of this. Working with nonprofits is always such a pleasure because there's nothing like working for a positive cause. And so I applaud everybody's, efforts, and I'm so thankful that I get to work with this audience. So I really hope you got something out of this, and best of luck when it comes to your grant writing. Thank you so much, and have a wonderful, wonderful day. All right, bye, everybody.